Hello KIPPsters and welcome back to science class. Hope you had a relaxing weekend, but now it's time to get back to work. Today we're going to be learning about Objective 5.1a, which deals with lab safety. It's extremely important because when we do labs and experiments in class, we'll need to make sure we're being safe and making sure that no one has the chance of getting injured. Our aim for today, go ahead and read it along in your head with me. KIPPsters will be able to explain safe lab practices and the use of safety equipment to prepare for safe lab procedures. Okay, so it's very important that we learn about safety in this class so no one gets hurt. Now we're going to talk about notes. The first thing we need to know about is what is a hazard. Okay, a hazard is something that can be dangerous. So for example, animals can be dangerous. Sharp instruments or heat. Glassware can be dangerous. A chemical hazard, an electrical hazard, an eye and face hazard, fire hazard, biohazard, laser radiation hazard, radioactive hazard, or even an explosion hazard. All of these are something that can be very dangerous. We're going to go ahead and pause this video. Make sure you write down the whole definition of hazard. The next thing we're going to talk about is a precaution. A precaution is something done to prevent an accident. So for example, wearing your safety goggles. Okay, what is this going to protect? This will protect your eyes to make sure that nothing gets in them, any chemicals, any dust, any pointy objects. Another thing is to make sure that you don't horse around in the lab. That's another way of saying make sure you're not goofing off, running around, or doing anything that you're not supposed to be doing. Next is to make sure that you don't bring any food and drink into the lab, because sometimes that can get in the way and some things just shouldn't be mixed. Go ahead and pause this video once again and write down the whole definition of precaution. The next thing we're going to talk about are our safety tools. And in science class we have 3 safety tools that help us take precautions. The first are goggles. Goggles are a very good tool to protect our eyes and to make sure that nothing gets into our eyes that we don't want there, any hazards. The next thing is gloves. Gloves protect us from any hazards that might get on our hands. So for example, chemicals or anything sharp that may cut us, gloves can protect us from those. And the last thing is a lab apron. Now I know it looks goofy, but sometimes it's really important to make sure that we protect our bodies, because things might spill and we want to make sure that nothing gets on our clothes that doesn't need to be there. Go ahead and take a moment and write down the whole definition of what safety tools are. Now we're going to practice. In the picture below, think of one thing that is not following lab safety. So what are we looking at? We're looking at this picture and we see girls. What are they doing incorrectly? Go ahead and take 10 seconds to think about it. All right, 10 seconds are up. Now let's see, what is wrong? The first thing is that the students are eating and drinking. We know that food is not allowed at any lab station. The girls also have their hair down. Now I know we didn't talk about this, but we need to make sure that we keep our hair out of the things that we're investigating, whether it be liquids, solids, or different types of gases. It's really important that our hair doesn't get in the way. The next thing is we notice that the girls are not wearing any safety gloves, which is really important because it looks like they're dealing with some sort of liquid, and we're not sure if that liquid can hurt our skin or not. Also, they're not wearing a safety apron. Once again, we do not want anything on our clothes that does not need to be there. Also, if you notice, it looks like the liquids or chemicals, they're pretty close to the edge of the desk. We want to make sure that there's no spilling happening in class. Let's make sure that all our chemicals or liquids stay towards the middle of our table so there's no chance that they'll fall off. This is not what you call a safe lab. Let's try it again. Once again, in the picture below, think of one thing that is not following lab safety. Let's take 10 seconds to think about it. Time's up. Now let's take a look. What is wrong with this picture? First, we notice that the students aren't wearing gloves. And the gentleman in this picture has a test tube above a flame. It's very important that we wear gloves so we protect ourselves from burning our hands. The students aren't wearing goggles either. We don't know if these liquids have any sort of chemicals that come off of them and come into our eyes. It's very important that we wear goggles to protect our eyes from any sort of chemicals. Also, the students aren't wearing any lab aprons. Once again, let's protect our clothes. The lady on the left is also not paying attention, and as you can notice with her hand, it seems like she's about to knock over that graduated cylinder. Remember, we want to be safe as possible in class. Let's make sure we're paying attention at all times. And last, the test tubes are laying on the table. Now, for some of you, you may think that's not a big deal. But remember, these test tubes can roll very easily, and we want to make sure that they don't roll off of the table and shatter so we have broken glass all over the ground. That is a definite hazard. There's also extra trash on the table. So if you notice next to the book, there's a wadded up piece of paper. If something shouldn't be there, let's make sure it's not in our way. This is not what you call a safe lab. And our last example. In the picture below, think of one thing that is not following lab safety. Let's take 10 seconds to think about it. Time's up. Let's take a look. The student is using an electric cord next to what is water. Now, for those of you who don't know, if you use electricity next to water, most likely you're going to get shocked, and that hurts a lot. The chemicals are left open on the table. If you notice there's a knife on the table, it's hanging off the table. This can be an extreme hazard. Let's make sure no one gets hurt. Also, if you look in the back, you'll notice there's a coat or a lab apron hanging off the sink. We want to make sure there are no articles of clothing just being laid around the lab. Okay? Lab needs to be safe and it needs to be clean and organized. The student also isn't wearing safety goggles. You know he has them and you can see them sitting on the table, but they're not on his face. Let's fix that. This is not what you call a safe lab. Next up, you're going to be doing an activity with SpongeBob. Let's go ahead and go back to our blog and check on what we need to do for the next activity.